Hello, Jonathan. Thank you so much for joining me. Really, what I'm wanting is to learn all of your top tips. Do you want to just introduce yourself to those people who may not know you?
Okay, so my name is Jonathan Fine. I work for Fine Company, which is a management consultancy business that operates exclusively in dentistry, and we work in the UK and Republic of Ireland and some other places from time to time, but principally that's where we work. We work largely for private practices, although we do have one or two mixed practices. At any one time, we're probably working for about 150 different practices across the UK and Ireland.
I'm really excited to pick your brains, Jonathan, but first of all, just talk me through what type of reactions you're seeing from the dentists that you're talking to.
Well, a really wide spectrum of reaction. There are people that are really sad to say, but they're kind of in denial. I don't think they fully understand the situation that they're going to be going back to, and that at the moment we're kind of in this sort of limbo land where the government's paying for our teams, our nurses and our receptionists, okay, 80%. And but they're all going to come back, and the government subsidy is going to stop, and it will stop quite soon. And you're going to have, a lot of practices are going to have no money, basically. And the problem is that we're coming back to a situation where there's a lot of pent-up demand, because I think if you're a member of the public and you've got toothache at the minute, it's a really big issue trying to get treatment at the right place. So I think there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand, but sadly that pent-up demand is going to be for low-value treatments. Mm-hmm. So I suspect when dentists come back to work and they open up their practices and they're gearing themselves up, they're going to be really busy really quick. But by the time they get to Christmas, they're going to look back and think, crikey, we haven't actually made any money, because the high-value treatments that generally delivers the profitability in private practice isn't going to be that easy to get to. For a number of reasons. One is there's a massive recession, and who knows how long that's going to last. And the second reason is that if you're not talking to them about it, they don't think you're doing it. And when they phone up and try and get an appointment and you're booked out with checkups, and they're not going to be able to get to see you. So it is a bit of an issue. And then there are other clients at the other end of the spectrum that I'd like to think all our clients, in fact, are gearing up for going back to work, and they've started working on going back to work now. They're sort of accepting that they need to reinvent themselves. There is this new normal, as we keep talking about, and there are various sort of components that will sort of drive the shape of the practice. And they're aware of that, and they're aware of the fact their cost base is going to change because of PPE. Mm-hmm. And they've all building up to have online consultations for high-value treatments, so the diary gets a fair share of those high-value treatments at the return to work. So they're all, they're not complacent. They're worried, and I don't think it's going to be easy. It's just not going to be easy. But it's fair to say there are some upsides, and I wouldn't want to overstate them, but there are upsides, because there will be a lot of dental practices that are just either not going to reopen, and maybe 20% of practices won't reopen, simply because they just don't want the hassle, don't want the aggro, might as well go and be an associate somewhere. And that creates an opportunity, because that means that if 20% of the practices in your catchment have closed down, then you've got a lot more opportunity to sell your services and hopefully attract new
patients. I remember I was graduating and setting up in practice in the early 90s, and that's when there was the 90s recession. And I remember queues of patients outside dental practices waiting, trying to register, particularly in York, which is one of the reasons that I established myself here. How do you see that affecting patients?
Well, I think patients, there's, I would hate to be an NHS patient, because I think if you're an NHS patient, you're going to have to wait a while to get an appointment. Mm-hmm. I think if you're a private patient, you will get an appointment straight away. So the queues won't be outside the private practices. I don't have to be queues outside the NHS practices, but, I think it'll be less easy to get an appointment.
Yeah. And how do you, what's your big advice that you're giving your practice owners at the moment?
Don't be a victim.
Yeah.
Don't be a victim, because it's easy to be a victim and to say, this corona thing has screwed up my life and blah, blah, blah. And my practice is worth half of what it was worth 6 months ago or 3 months ago. That's all fact. We can't do anything about that. That's just, get real. Take charge of your destiny. Start running your practice as a business, not as a dental provision service. Start running it as a business. Look at the numbers, understand your numbers.
Yeah. I think what you're saying there about many dental practice owners, I think because often we've worked so hard in the business, and also the income can be quite good, that often we don't look at the small figures so carefully, just because the top line, the net tends to...
That's it, exactly, Andrea. I mean, I think, you're absolutely right. I think dentists are in a very charmed world, or have been in a very charmed world. And, I was saying to you earlier, they go to school, they go to university, they become a dentist, they get a great job when they come out. If they work as an associate, they're earning 60, 70, 80 grand fairly quickly. And then they become, perhaps a partner, an associate partner in a practice, and, they're earning 150 grand. And, that's sort of the life cycle of a dentist in the UK and Ireland. And nobody has trained them for, what to do in a recession, what to do when things don't quite go according to plan.
I don't think as dentists that we're very used to hardship, are we?
No, I don't think so.
It's come easy for us. I mean, dentistry is an easy profession, but it's relative to many.
Well, in terms of business, because the demand has been growing steadily since 2010 for private dentistry in particular. And with the advent of facial aesthetics, the demand in a dental practice, if you want to work there and earn money, you can have a great income. But if you just want to bob along the top, you can also have quite a comfortable existence. Forget that. That isn't the way it's going to be in the future. I think in real terms, associate pay plans are going to change. They're going to come down. They have to come down because the cost base...
You mean the associate percentages?
Yeah. So, now an associate gets, is on a pay plan of 45%, or something. That can't exist. It has to start with a 3 in the future, and it will do.
I didn't...
Because you'll have a choice. There's going to be a lot of associates about looking for work.
Yeah. How do you think that is going to affect associates more, really, in terms of demand for their services?
Well, there's always going to be demand for dentists, but, there's dentists and there's dentists. So depending on their sort of, their skill set. So, I would imagine an associate that is a specialist orthodontic associate is not actually going to experience much change, because he or she is going to be in such big demand almost straight away. So that's not really an issue. If you're an implantologist, I don't think you'll probably have to move around a bit to get the work, and you only want to work with practices that can give you full diaries. So you'll be quite selective about where you want to work. But also I think you have to accept that your percentage is going to change.
In my world, there's been different phases to this. I mean, first of all, obviously, there was just a shutting down of the practice and mothballing. And then I think personally, I went through just a few days of shock almost. So, that this weird thing had just happened almost completely out of the blue, even though we'd had warning. And then now it feels like almost a period of calm. Calm and preparation, I think, like aggressive preparation. And how do you see those phases?
Well, I must admit, I sort of, I'm in it, like you. And so I think I was being quite resolute at the beginning. I was confused by all the information. I was trying to assimilate the information. And then when Boris Johnson got taken into intensive care, I actually cried, because it was a moment where I realized, God, this thing is horrible. It's affecting somebody I know. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Boris, but I was moved to tears when I heard the news. And I think we're all kind of being very emotionally charged about the thing. And, we've got families, and I've got 13 grandchildren that I can't cuddle. and it really, that really upsets me. So it affects everybody in different ways. So there's this kind of blanket of emotion that's sort of running through our lives that is making us feel not really as sharp as we might be. We're kind of subdued to some extent. And we've got out of the habit of work as well. We don't have the right structures. All the structures changed and it doesn't feel the same. So I think there's, I think there's a recession we're going back to, but I think there's also some social adjustment we're going back to as well. And, social distancing is going to be with us for quite a long time, I would imagine. And all of that is, people working from home and not working from home, and people needing to go out to work to escape the kids or escape the life that they're locked into now. I mean, there'll be some people who think it's great and some people think it's terrible. So you're going to have all this jumble going. So I think that affects our decisions. That determines whether we want to spend money on a new car or a new set of implants for our front teeth or whatever. Everything is going to be affected by this.
How do you think moving forwards our lives are going to be affected long term and our businesses are going to be affected long term? I mean, we look back at the last recession, 2008. I mean, how long did it take for things to get to normal then? 5 years? House prices, what did that take? 10 years or something? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think that, in the beginning, people were talking about a V-shaped recession, and then they were talking about a U-shaped recession. I think we're talking about an L-shaped recession. I think this recession we're going back to is going to be with us for a very long time. And it will change a lot of attitudes to how money is invested and money is managed, because all the rules are going to have to be rewritten. And I think that only means sort of like things like house prices aren't going to increase, they'll probably decrease. I think that people loaning you money are going to be a lot more vigilant about how they're going to get repaid. So I think it'll become more difficult to raise capital to do things. I think we're all going to have to earn 20% less in order to just get back to where we were. So you take 20% off what you earned last year. I think that's a fair, if you're achieving that in year 3 of this go back to work, I think you'll be doing quite well.
I mean, it's going to affect our spending, it's going to affect wages. I mean, how are you looking at your dentist suppliers? Are you contacting them and discussing reducing costs at the moment?
Well, it wouldn't be my place to do that, but I think it's only reasonable to expect that Henry Schein is going to have to renegotiate their contracts with their customers, because their customers, dentistry has always been awash with cash. There's always been, they haven't had to work too hard to get the sales. If you look at the cost of, the consumables that you use in dentistry, and you benchmark the prices against the highest, Henry Schein to some of the street fighters, there's a massive difference. So if I was Henry Schein, and they're a great company, I've got no bad feelings about them or anything, their margins are going to have to change, because dentists just can't afford it. The cost has to come down, whether it's labor or supplies. The costs have to come down. So if you're running a lab, you need to sharpen your pencil. You're going to have to drop your prices to keep your dentists in business. Otherwise, they won't be making enough money.
So I've got a specific question for you about holidays. So during furlough, then the staff are accumulating holidays, obviously. What's your recommendation to practice owners? Are you asking them to take their holidays during furlough or throughout next year?
We're actively saying to your team, you need to say to them, can you please book your holidays now? Because we can't have you coming back to work and then taking 2 weeks off just right when we're back, and we're going to be quite busy.
So one of the issues with that, obviously, is that they'll go off furlough and then we'll need to pay their wages. So that's got a cash flow implication.
I think it's a fair price to pay. But I think you'll also find the good thing about dental practices is that they tend to be smaller businesses, and they tend to have really, really good teams, that understand each other. They've evolved over a period of time. So most principals have enough of a relationship with their team to be able to say, you know, Maureen, I wonder if you'd mind doing this instead of doing that. And Maureen will be a reasonable person because she understands that the principal wouldn't be asking her that unless there was a good reason for it.
How do you think our shopping habits are going to change? I mean, both buying at the dental practice, but also externally.
Well, I think shopping, you know, the high street is you know, was in change. It was diminishing in size, and I think the main thing that's happened here is that that's only going to accelerate because all of us have now got into the habit of buying stuff online. I actually bought some shampoo online a couple of days ago. I never thought I'd ever buy shampoo online, but I actually bought shampoo online. So now I'm probably always going to buy shampoo online because it's much easier. I just have to click the thing I did before and I don't have to worry about anything. It just comes. And it's actually a bit cheaper. So yeah, I think all our shopping habits will change. I think the high street will become a bit more residential than it has been. And I think it, you know, it provides a great opportunity for dentists to get into the high street.
So tell me a little bit more about your thoughts about dentists moving into the high street, because typically dentists have been in semi-detached houses in residential areas, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, I have, you know, I've been working in the sector for about 10 years and my background's marketing, so it's particularly retail marketing, so that's where I come from. So I used to work for lots of big retailers. So I've always been on a bit of a mission to move dentistry away from the semi-detached house into the you know, the shopping mall or the strip mall or high visibility street or whatever. We've done that with quite a lot of our clients, and the idea of retailization in dentistry is very popular with the public. So when you stick a dental practice next door to a Costa and next door to a Boots and across the road from a Specsavers, it's amazing how your business profile changes and how quickly the business moves into profit. So we often say to, we're not very popular with agents, but we often say to prospective buyers, why don't you just start a squad in your local, you know, shopping mall, and quite honestly, you'll get to the profit much quicker, and it's sustainable profit. We're you know, our best example, it generates a you know, 1,100 square foot unit will generate about 33% EBITDA, between 33 and 35%. There isn't anything in dentistry that gets anything like that. In a retail unit, that's the sort of level you can expect.
If the high street shops are going bust and there's going to be more empty shops, and this is certainly an opportunity.
This is the big opportunity. So these are the opportunities, you know, that first of all, you've got the shrinking number of providers, you've got the collapse of the retail values, so it opens up the door. So it's you know, it's possible, I would imagine, to get into a high value venue with big footfall and not pay any rent for 2 years because they don't want to have empty units.
Yeah.
10 years ago when I was trying to do this, the shopping mall owners wouldn't even consider a dental practice.
No, I moved into retail premises, and it's an odd concept, isn't it, for councils really to.
Whereabouts are you in York?
I'm in York on really a B Street, a B High Street on Goodrum Gate.
Right.
Yeah. Oh. It's shop front, and the visibility is so great. Whereas we used to be back street before, out the way.
Yeah. So made a heck of a difference to your business, I'm sure. Really
big difference, just with footfall and visibility. Yeah. So obviously, aesthetic dentistry and facial aesthetics has been growing rapidly in dentistry over the last 10-20 years. How do you see that going for this? Going into this recession? Well,
thankfully we've got you know, sort of good new restrictions coming into facial aesthetics, so you know, it's lifting the importance of it from a medical perspective. And I think we're kind of explore the whole area of aesthetic medicine as opposed to just fillers, and you know, it's more of a treatment plan for a patient. It isn't about going in and getting your lips done and it only costing you 150 quid or something. That isn't the kind of space that I think you want to be in if you're a dentist. I think you need to be looking at facial aesthetics or aesthetic medicine, as you look at dentistry, it needs to be part of a whole program of cosmetic management of, you know, somebody's smile and their face and their whole persona. So I do think it's going to develop, and I do think it's going to be extremely important to practices in terms of their volume of patients. Because the good thing about facial aesthetics is the repurchase cycle. You know, you're bringing the patient back into the practice on a regular basis. And cosmetic dentistry, because of technology, you know, anything from an iTero scan to you know, the sort of the innovations that are coming into dentistry from technology are making it easier for patients to have treatment. It's less cumbersome, it's quicker, and it's, you know, I'm not going to say it's cheaper, because it isn't, but it's better is probably what I would say. So patients can buy with more confidence.
And with regards to marketing, what's your advice for your practice owners moving when we finish lockdown? Are you going to advise them to do heavy marketing to get the patients in, slow marketing, or no marketing?
I think that it's really important to start 4 weeks out and to build a marketing program that starts a month before we go back to work. And the main sort of tactic would be to promote online consultations and using social media and pay-per-click. SEO in the interim period, don't stop it. You know, for heaven's sake, don't think you can save money by not doing SEO, because it's a great time to spend money on SEO because your competitors aren't spending. But you will plummet down the search if you neglect it, if you stop paying for it, and it'll take you an awful long time to rebuild it. So yeah, so I would say that the ring fence on your budget needs to be around marketing. You need to spend money on marketing.
Yeah. Have you been in touch with other practitioners or other businesses more globally? And do you know, I mean, what's happening there? I mean, I was hearing today that the dentists are just reopening now in China, which is interesting. I mean, they went into lockdown on the 23rd of January, so that's approximately 12 weeks afterwards, isn't it? Which is an indicator of what might happen here. But have you been hearing anything?
I was particularly impressed with the Korean, South Korean. Well, I think everybody's massively impressed with South Korea and how they've handled it. But their dental practices didn't close at all, and they've just because they built a protocol for dealing with patients who may or may not have the infection that was robust and efficient. They didn't actually close. They continued to trade, and it didn't make any difference at all to them. So if you want this sort of standout leader for dentistry, look at the South Korean market.
Have you got any, what's your top take-home advice for us?
Don't be a victim.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't be a victim. You know, everything has changed. Accept it. Don't try and sort of rationalize it. It's just has changed. What you need to do is come out of the ring fighting, and don't be a victim.
Thanks ever so much, Jonathan. Really, really appreciate your time.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Cheers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.